Welcome to another episode of Retrospective Gaming. An unexpected break ended up turning into an unexpected hiatus, but I'm back, I'm on my meds, I'm stable, and I'm ready to put out another video. I've read as many comments, DMs, messages as I can, and even still to this day, people are asking me when I'm coming back. I've been doing YouTube for a while, and I still get flattered whenever anyone comes back to the channel. It's been over a year and people are still asking me that, so that means a lot to me. I really mean it. I appreciate y'all and thanks for sticking with me. I hope everyone's well, and if you're not, I hope it gets better. I really mean that. I truly do. So this video, I'm talking about an underappreciated game, a cult classic, a game that definitely needs to be talked about more. And that game is Anachronox. I reviewed it, I believe 5 years ago, and now I'm revisiting it. But before I talk about my experiences with the game, I want to talk a bit about the development. Anachronox was developed by Ironstorm, a company founded by Tom Hall, John and Adrian Carmack, and John Romero. John and Adrian Carmack and John Romero are most known for Doom, Quake, Wolfenstein, and more. And these three games alone are enough for anyone's legacy. It's more than enough. Not only are these three games some of the most influential shooters of all time, they're some of the most influential games too. Doom itself, it's a cultural icon. Ask anyone familiar with video games just a little bit about Doom, and they should know about it. And Tom Hall, he's no slouch either. He worked on Wolfenstein 3D, Commander Keen, and Rise of the Triad. Ironstorm had different teams working on different games, and Tom Hall was the project lead for Anachronox. He wanted to bring a console-style role-playing game to PC, and one of his biggest influences for Anachronox was Chrono Trigger. He had the idea for the main character Boots since college. Here's a quote from Tom Hall back in 2000, a year before the game came out, when asked to describe Anachronox, and I quote, "Anachronox is a 3D third-person sci-fi cinematic role-playing game, except with a constant 3D in-engine experience. You never leave your level of reality when seeing cinematics." End quote. Tom Hall's goal was to westernize the JRPG and bring it to PC. Since we are talking about console-style RPGs, I think it's important to list some of his other favorites that he said in another interview. Now I'm strictly talking about console-style RPGs. He does list a bunch of other games too, including early influences like Wizardry and Ultima, but his main influence for Anachronox were JRPGs, and some of the ones that he talked glowingly about during development are Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VII, Chrono Cross, Final Fantasy III aka FF6, and Final Fantasy V. There's a recent interview from 2021 with Tom Hall, the 20th anniversary of the game, and this not only served as a look back at Anachronox, but also Ironstorm itself. And in this interview, Tom Hall said that the Anachronox team never grew to more than 13 people, and it was made up of people that either were new or had little experience in the gaming industry. The team mainly consisted of people that knew first-person shooters. I'm talking modding, making level, those things. Now I want to clarify something. When I say inexperienced, I don't mean that they just walked on and this was their first game or project ever. People that archived interviews on places like Wayback Machine, Planet Anachronox, and more. There's so much information, and not only interviews and screenshots, but IRC chats dating back to even 1998 when the game was early in development. And looking at all this information, I found some interesting stuff about the team. For example, one of the level designers, Richard Charlton aka Zadim, was involved in a mod scene from 1996 to 2005, and he made mods for Quake 1-3, Morrowind, Hexen, Doom, and more. Josh J was one of the artists on the team, and before Ironstorm, he was part of the team that made Sanatorium, another good game. And Lee Perry was in the research and development division of Squaresoft LA and had experience on tech projects for future Final Fantasy engines. And that specific information was given in March 1998, and at that time he had been with Ironstorm for 8 months, so you can put together what tech engines he might have seen. Also, someone on the team made models for the movie Starship Troopers. Things happen during game development. Ideas get scrapped or modified. Delays happen, resources dry up, or the game might be rushed, and with Anachronox, all of the above happened. Reading early interviews and IRC chats, one of the ideas that did stick was Anachronox being a grand story, a grand vision told through multiple parts. And it was supposed to be a trilogy. This was supposed to be a grand saga like I said before, but unfortunately that never happened. So all we have as of right now is one Anachronox, and most likely that won't change. One of the most interesting and unfortunate things about Anachronox's development is the time in which it came out. Ion Storm released 2 games in 2000, Daikatana and Deus Ex, and with those games being released, something happened. And Anachronox was in a situation that few games ever been in. Daikatana was a massive flop, and the hype was there. It's hard to understand or even to explain the hype, because as John Romero, the guy who was involved with id Software, the guy whose face was everywhere, the publicity, the promotion after Doom came out, then you had Quake and more. This was the person, John Romero, and his team. A revolutionary title, a title that would impact not only gaming, but popular culture in the 2000s and beyond, just like Doom did in 90s and still to this day. And remember, Daikatana came out in 2000. At this point, the room was crowded, the competition was fierce. There were a lot of great FPS games. And specifically talking about the late 90s, some first-person shooters that come to mind are Half-Life, Unreal Tournament, System Shock 2, Requiem, Avenger Angel, Star Siege Tribes, Blood, Kingpin Life of Crime, Shadow Warrior, Alien vs Predator, and more. So the PC was not starving for first-person shooters, and this is the environment that Daikatana released in. Like I said before, Daikatana was a flop, and because of the people involved in it, it got a lot of attention. When you fuck up, people, they will look at everything you did, and you're gonna get a lot of scrutiny. And one of the things that people still talk about till this day is one of the promotion posters where it tells you, John Romero is going to make you his bitch. So obviously that promotion poster backfired, but other than it being cringy, I don't see the big deal. And 1 month after Daikatana came out, Deus Ex was released, and these games are polar opposite in reception and legacy, because 20 plus years later, Deus Ex is still remembered as not only a fantastic game, but one of the best games of all time, while Daikatana is known as one of the biggest disasters. In a 2021 interview, Tom Hall describes Daikatana as the game that killed the studio. And the last year of Anachronox's development was them overworking themselves, knowing that by the time the game was done and it was ready to release, they would have to look for work elsewhere. And in that same interview, he talked about the publisher, Eidos, being very kind to it. That if the game was in development today, any major publisher would have dropped it. It would have been done. One of the pieces of information that I'm using for this video is an interview with Tom Hall from Vice, and it was for the 20th anniversary of the game. And this interview is titled How Kindness Saved Anachronox. And in this article, Tom Hall talks about how Eidos was kind to them, the publisher, and that they saved Anachronox. They had honchos there, the people that make decisions. They decided to keep it going even though there was a lot of problems because John Romero's flop. This game came out after Daikatana, and the fact that Ion Storm reportedly had a lot of debt when Eidos bought a stake in them, etc., etc. According to this interview, the main reason why Anachronox was allowed to be finished and not cancelled was because people were vouching for Tom Hall's project, because apparently at Eidos, whether it was the higher ups, marketing, whatever, spokesperson, they had enough people vouching for them and they liked Tom Hall enough, they thought he was a good dude, that they allowed them to finish it. And in hindsight, Rob Dyer, one of the people interviewed in this article, said that they should have cancelled Anachronox. Looking at his name when you look it up, it's obvious that he had a lot of clout in Eidos. I think he still works there. Now, based on my research, I want to give a different perspective because we all know how corporations, companies are. They'll take the slightest thread and do that famous corporate spin and spin it into the most altruistic, kindest, most amazing thing that has ever existed to try and make the entity that is known as a corporation, a company, look good. They're masters of it. Doesn't matter if it's a really small company or a really big company. If they have a marketing team, if they have CEOs, if they have executives, if they have that funding, there's a lot of psychological stuff going on. They study this stuff. Don't ever allow yourself to be fooled by that. Every little thing about marketing, about a company, etc., is psychological to get you to buy something and to try to make itself look good. So, according to my research, I want to give a different perspective. Anachronox didn't really have much of a chance to be a success. There was little to no marketing, and early in development, we're talking about 1999, they're already thinking of trying to cut Iron Storm, Eidos, or trying to cut Anachronox, because Anachronox had the unfortunate experience of being the last game to come out in what Iron Storm's original design was, 3 teams working on 3 different games. Shortly after the game came out, Planet Anachronox did an interview with Travis343 Doggett. He was a team member on the game, and he also was a mainstay on the Planet Anachronox forums, so he was really close to the community. When interviewed before, he was kind of a jack of all trades for the company. So when he was interviewed, they asked him this question: did the complete closure of Iron Storm and the release of the Anachronox team, despite massive community acclaim for the game itself, surprise you? And this was his response. And I quote, "Yes and no. I think it's foolish and rash. Eidos could have cut a few people and moved us to a more humble office, and we would have been able to continue with the Anachronox franchise. Probably would have made them a lot of money too. But I also understand why they thought it was a good idea. I'm pretty sure that the people in charge of shutting us down don't really understand what they did. That being said, it didn't surprise me. This has been floating over our heads for a long time now. And, to continue a metaphor Matt's used in the message boards, if someone's got a gun to your head, even if the gun's been against your head for years, you still have to keep in mind that it could go off at any time." End quote. Now, after Anachronox was released and the team was let go, some of the teammates, including Travis, also worked on a new patch for Anachronox. So there are unpaid and unofficial patches that were released by former team members. So with all that being said, being put in that weird situation where you have to follow not only a major flop, but also a major success in 1 year. Think about it. Summer of 2000, Daikatana and Deus Ex. Then 2001, after the studio being in chaos for so long, and after knowing that the development team will not have a job and have to go elsewhere after this, the game comes out. So what are my thoughts on Anachronox? I reviewed it back in 2017, and now I'm revisiting it. How do I feel about it? What's my opinion? You're about to find out. The game starts off on a planet called Anachronox. What is the history behind this place? In order to get more information on that, let's go to the local news. And I quote, "Anachronox was discovered in 198 AC, a short 200 years after the first Terran alien contact, and 30 years after the Senders were first discovered. Details of discovery are sketchy, but the first team to land on Anachronox took an unexplored sender spike into the center of Sender 1, then met with some sort of horrible fate. They all appear to have died from a horrible electric virus, their bodies scorched and scarred, faces twisted in pain. 3 of the team appeared to have fallen into one of the bottomless chasms that cleave at various parts of Anachronox. The team had been chased by a pack ship for firing in intergalactic space, then disappeared suddenly into the spike. After a probe confirmed the spike was safe, PAX guards found the bodies, but no sign of the ship. Because of the strange electric virus, the city planet was purged in every way possible, from antibacterial agents to a large deionization sweep. But the stigma remained, and the scientists dubbed the planetoid Anachronox. From anachronism, something left over from the past, and nox, from noxious or poison. Literally, it is a poison from the past. No one wanted to inhabit Anachronox for a long time, but alternate businesses and, shall we say, the hardier, rougher element of the galaxy took up residence. Thus, we have Anachronox today. A tough place to live, but a tough place to leave." End quote. Now that you know more about the planet, who is this game focused on? That character is Sylvester Buccelli, but he goes by Sly Boots. Now Sly Boots is a private detective, but Sly isn't someone with high prestige or a luxurious lifestyle. He's down on his luck with the office in the slums and a mountain of debt that just keeps piling. And this debt is so bad that our introduction to him is watching some guy throw Boots out of the window. But it doesn't take long to see that there's more to Boots than just being an out-of-luck detective in the slum. There's this person named Fatima that accompanies him by living in a device. That's right, I said she is in this device and she comes out through a hologram so she's able to communicate. She's not very fond of him right now, although she is there to help him plan. She also mocks him for being undecisive and lazy and just not getting over this slump. Thanks to the bartender, Boots finally finds some work, and this work is for an old prick appropriately named the Grumps. Now, Grumps is an interesting character himself. He's been trying to find this mystical thing. He keeps talking about it, and it's something that's just apparently so hard to get and so valuable that he has sent other people to their deaths just trying to get it. And his last hope is Boots. But he just doesn't give him the job right on the spot. He gives him a test that shows that he can be crafty, he can be sneaky, he can be persuasive, he can maneuver around. He's very street smart. And what is that task? To take a helmet from a very condescending guard, and Boots succeeds in that task. So they go scavenging, they go through tunnels, they're trying to find this mythical item. They're trying to find something that legends are made of, something that you hear in fables, rumors, all that stuff. They're not just looking for a rare watch or something worth a lot of money. This is something different. This is something that I guess you consider something that destiny calls to. That dramatic shit. And they finally get their hands on something that could be that. But what happens? They run into a person named Delta, a mobster, someone that came up from the gutter that I guess we can say is into some nefarious business. And of course, their henchman beats him up, and this two-man crew is stuck. And they're very sure that they got their hands on Mystech. But right now, nobody can 100% explain where Mystech comes from. But there are prophecies surrounding it, and people do connect it to ancient history. Think of it like this. Imagine someone found an unknown artifact gleaming with something unknown to us, and it connects back to our ancient history like Babylonia or the Anunnaki. But that's not the only theory. There are other people who think that it connects to futuristic civilizations. And around the galaxy, those are the theories. Those are what people think of Mystech, the urban legends, etc., etc. So now, after being the victims of a stick-up and having all the things taken from them, they decide to go on a mission to get it back and figure more out about this weird piece of technology. Is it ancient? Is it from the future? Is it serious? Is it a dud? They try to find that out, but not for any moral reasons. They're not trying to make the world better. They're not trying to save someone. Originally, their grand plan is to get rich. Especially Grumpos, and I said Grumps earlier, but his name is Grumpos. I just called him that for short. It is clear from the very beginning that Anachronox does not take itself seriously. At its core, what is it? It's a mix of noir, some moments that can be tear-jerky, it tugs on the heartstrings, it gets you emotional, and a lot, and I mean a lot, of corny comedy. You add all that up, you mix it together, you get Anachronox. And I don't mean corny in a bad way, because it's executed well. Let's take Boots for example, the protagonist, the main character. He often delivers one-liners. An example of one of them is, and I quote, "You want to know the difference between you and the you 5 minutes ago? The you 5 minutes ago had 5 minutes to live." End quote. And that gives you a good idea of the type of comebacks that he delivers. And despite the fact that they are intentionally kind of cringy to really cringy, it's part of his natural personality. He has charm, and Boots isn't some genius who always plans 2,000 steps ahead and knows what to do, constantly calculating the grand chessboard and all that. No, he's goofy, he's a little airheaded at times, and he can be a little bit of a prick. Well, it's a range, because it goes from a little bit to a prick to a whole lot of a prick. Boots is the type of guy that is so desperate for work. He's the type to advertise on Craigslist, take any job, give you a discount of 95% off, just so he can get some advertising. Boots is the type of detective that would go online and message a person that was just claiming that there's a secret government conspiracy, that some military helicopters that fly around the earth, especially CIA ones, are actually living organic beings that was merged with something, kind of like a humanoid fusion, and they actually have living organic systems, like a beating heart, a helicopter version of a heart, and they stalk people and all that, and they travel through different dimensions. And Boots would sit there and message the person that was claiming that and tell them he would take the case for the change under his bed. And you know what that means? That means me and Boots, we have things in common. Well, I do it for free because this is something that everyone needs to know. At first glance, it's obvious that Boots has fallen on hard times. He's a mess. But while he is very unlucky, and sometimes that luck is of his own doing, there's also a side to him that is also kind of lucky too. It's kind of like that yin-yang duality of man bullshit, because he often stumbles into clues and gigantic breakthroughs. I'm talking about things that will not only affect the group, but the whole damn planet. or planets. And that is a major positive about the game, the humor. And Boots is the only one that could lead this clusterfuck of a team through Anachronox and beyond. One of the joys of replaying a game is keeping an eye out and discovering new things. Not only keeping an eye on the major stuff, but the little details too, whether it's a character design, a building, an NPC, a piece of dialogue, whatever it is. And that happened many times when I was replaying Anachronox. And let me give you an example of one of them. And it's just ridiculous, so ridiculous. One of the party members that you run into is Dr. Rowe. Boots and Grumpos meets her early in their journey, and what do we see? This intelligent doctor on this serene, calm, blissful planet. And she's obviously working on something really important, which happens to be Mystech, but it's unknown to her, and that's why she's doing this experiment. This unknown experiment, which can unlock so many mysteries and broaden the knowledge of what we know about this piece of technology, whether ancient or from the future. They want to find that out. It could be a breakthrough, or it could cause a major catastrophe, which would make her look like a mad scientist, an evil genius. So we have this planet filled with intellectuals, and on this planet this scientist is doing an important experiment. What type of security would you think someone like her has? Dr. Roe Bowman, an expert gunman? Someone that definitely knows martial arts, they're experts in hand-to-hand fighting. Or gun turrets. Maybe a robotic assassin humanoid, which would definitely exist in Anachronox. I mean, they exist right now where we're living. That's just something the government doesn't tell you. You don't have to wait till 2300 to see that. But no, nothing of the sort. What is Dr. Rowe's security? Her security is my personal whatever level of Dante's fucking Inferno, because we have to go through this painfully slow trek through long hallways, and after going through these hallways, it's almost like those nightmares, those paintings, those whatever visions where you're trying to run towards something and it never gets closer. No matter how much you run towards it, sprint, no matter what, you could be there for 10 fucking days, you won't get a half a mile closer. The security system is locked with something even worse. Simon Says. That's right. Remember that game from back in the day where you had to follow Simon's rules? Simon Says, press red, blue, blue, yellow, or whatever. Yellow, yellow, blue. Whatever the fuck. I hated that game as a kid. In fact, when I was 10 years old, I thought one of those damn games was cursed, and I thought it was going to explode, so I threw that motherfucker in the trash can, and it somehow ended on my porch. My apartment complex porch. That thing was stalking me. So this is 8th, 9th, 10th, whatever. I say 2000 level of Dante's Inferno. That's what it's like for me. And I am not exaggerating. Fuck Simon Says. And that is her security. That's what keeps people from seeing her. It's so damn absurd. And even though it torments every fiber of my being, Simon Says, I can't help but respect it. And in a game filled with absurdities and goofiness, this is one of the things that stood out to me. Bravo, Ironstorm. Bravo. Anachronox's humor is the reason why it's memorable and definitely a cult classic. It's bizarre, it's absurd, and lighthearted. Keyword being lighthearted, it's consistent from beginning to end. Now, some games try to balance the lighthearted approach by having a lot of tear-jerky, heartstring-pulling, emotional moments with intricate tangle webs all throughout trying to hit you emotionally and grab at your very core. And don't get me wrong, Anachronox does have some moments like that, and we'll talk about them later. But the overall narrative is that no matter what, even if planets are blowing up, even if Anachronox and the rest of the galaxy are about to be invaded, even if you see everyone struggling in poverty, like Boots and his crew are never above making corny jokes or fighting like a dysfunctional childish family, even in the most serious moments of the game. There's always an awkward moment, or a corny one-liner, or just finding something by essentially tripping into it. And the game reminds you that no matter what, it's not that serious. Anachronox at its core is a bizarre, absurd, lighthearted parody. It knows what it is, and it sticks on that path. And it stays on that path, and even when it strays away from it a bit, it always goes back to it. It's not a game that spends the whole time trying to figure out what it is and never finds that, no. The game knows what it is from the start, and I think they executed that well. And just like how we can relate to a piece of media that is filled with tragic stories, deep philosophical questions that are meant to hit you at your very core and so on, We can also relate to a bunch of dysfunctional bumblefucks trying their best regardless of their many issues. They're the B team. They're the other people you hire when you can't get someone else that's more efficient. This is a group that is just one short hair, one short thread, one half step away from fucking everything up. And sometimes they do fuck shit up. And it's only luck, not skill, not brains, but luck that pulls them out of it. But even with all that, they get the job done. And there's something respectable about that. And we can all relate to those type of situations or those type of teams. They're the best we got. And if I only had a couple of words to describe Anachronox, it's this: an endearing clusterfuck. Another point about the humor, Anachronox is a galaxy of absurdity, and even though the game takes place far in the future with concepts, different planets that you can travel to, races of aliens that you can coexist with, species, technology and all, things that are out of our grasp, things that we'll never see in our lifetime, even though it has all that. The humor, the absurdity, it's pretty grounded overall and definitely relatable to a lot of us, at least somewhat. And just to sidetrack real quick, because this is a public service announcement to anybody that listens to this from the year 3000, 4000, somehow, if that's even possible, I want you to do me a favor. Find my grave, find my body, use the scanner, do whatever you can, and find out if a mortician touched that after I died, because I have it in my will that after I die, no one's touching it. No mortician, I don't care, I'm dead, it is what it is, game over, life moves on. I don't want to be touched. I don't trust morticians. I don't trust any of them motherfuckers. Find that out. And if I am, find a way to revive me. Look, I got $50 in my bank account. Over time, the interest, it adds up. We'll split the money in half. We'll be able to get out of the space slum. It's up to you. Now that you've listened to this, whatever futuristic citizen that you are, you have that choice. Make easy money, or just continue to listen to the video. But we'll find out 1,000 years from now. If you're someone that's listening to this in present time, thank you. Thank you for listening. It means so much to me. Now that we're done with that public service announcement, these things are very important, and you have to broadcast it as much as you can. You never know. So, back to the game. There is a lot of humor that's grounded and relatable, and that's another part of Anachronox's humor that is executed well. Let me give you an example. Let's talk about a sage in the game, a prophet that Boots and his crew meets early on and gives them vital information to move forward to continue marching on to their destiny. Now, when you think of a sage, you would think that they live in some place that's serene, quiet, a place to gather their thoughts and help all those who seek them. Peaceful, right? Not here though. This is Anachronox. South Anachronox to be exact. The prophet is someone that's so disturbed and so distracted by the endless amounts of voices in their head that he has to concentrate. But only few things can calm him down in that palace, which happens to be a landfill. Now, out of all the things it could be, it's not drugs, it's not alcohol, not love, not sex. No, the only way the schizophrenic can concentrate, and I don't use that as an insult. I understand, the struggle is real, friend, I relate, but the only way this motherfucker, and just for the record, I don't relate to this specifically, his coping method. This motherfucker, the only thing that helps him concentrate is smelly, nasty, rotting, dirty, bespattered, filthy, mucky, unwashed items to chew on, to eat, digest, to consume. So the solution for Boots and his crew is to find some man that was walking around for 5,000 miles, it feels like, and he has this pus-filled dirty sock that looks like it's been dipped in the bubonic plague for 2,000 years, this flat-footed alien that he's literally walking around dragging this smelly piece of shit, literally, it's a pus-filled sock, it's close, and that's what that sage needs in order to chew on to calm down, to show you the way. And this game shows that. No matter if it's the year 1000, 2000, 3000, whether you're back in the days where a purported sea confederation was fighting ancient Egypt, or you're here in the year 2022, human beings will have certain experiences that transcend all cultures, time periods, experiences, and ages. And what's that experience? Running into nasty people that will make you floss twice as much as you did before. Now, it's obvious I enjoyed the game, I liked the story and narrative, but there were flaws. It's a linear game, and that's fine, but there were missed opportunities to share more about some characters, especially Boots, the main protagonist. We hear from multiple characters, and we hear this a lot, that Boots was definitely a fuck up. He still kinda is. The type of guy to borrow money from you and never give it back or gamble it away. The lovable oaf that never misses the opportunity to reach new heights just to fall back down again into the slums. I know it's designed to be linear, but I thought it would help to put more stories in from just not even main characters, but just NPCs, people that you might see once or twice, because it's obvious, especially in South Anachronox, Boots is known by a lot of people, and the game does explore its past, but I just thought there were missed opportunities. For example, when you go to Center Station, there's this guy that looks like Morpheus if he was an intergalactic cowboy. And he's just like Boots, a detective. And there's this history between Boots and him, and he just shows up out of nowhere and asks you to check a dead body for the first task. But he vanishes. You do see him again, but I think in moments like this they could have explained their history a bit more. We know how Boots is due to his interactions in the main story, but little side bits also help, and I think there should have been more of them. And when it comes to pacing, there are some parts where it's not even slowing down. The game is just a halt, a sludge. For example, right after doing an investigation inside a Mistech church, you have to go underground and just run back and forth, fight some enemies and mess with levers. And here's the thing, I don't mind puzzles. In fact, a lot of the games that I play, I wish there were more puzzles. But this area is way too simple and painstakingly boring. There's also another area later on with one of your party members, Paco. You have to run around a military base and talk to people and get some codes to decipher that, and that part could have been more complex too. And that's the thing with Anachronox. When it slows down, when you have to go through certain areas and decipher some stuff, mess with some puzzles, some of them are just way too simple. And at that point, since it's a linear game, just get rid of those puzzles. Thankfully, not every one of them is like this, and I know this stuff is prevalent to some degree, especially in RPGs, where developers, some of them, they pad the game out a little bit, or sometimes way too much, to give an excuse to fight more creatures, extend the time, learn the world more, whatever it is. And thankfully, Anachronox is pretty straightforward. It's not one of those games that is designed to be linear, but does so many half-ass attempts at padding to make it way longer than it needs to be. Anachronox does not do that, and that's a good thing. But I do think some areas and puzzles could have been changed, removed, or just make them faster so you don't have to stay in those areas as long. I just think they could have done better with some of those things. Unfortunately, the grand vision of Anachronox was never completed. It was never fully realized. There was supposed to be a sequel, but it's been over years and there's no Anachronox 2, there's only one game so far. And at this point, never say never, but the chances of us getting Anachronox 2 are very slim. And this is something that might dissuade people from playing the game again or for the first time. Let me clarify, the main quest, it does get wrapped up. You do find out more about Mistech and the secret behind it, but right at the end, it's revealed that someone in the crew was playing everyone and had different plans and reveals themselves for who they really are. I already spoiled enough, so I'm leaving it at that, but this is right at the end. So the ending sets it up so Boots and the remaining crew goes after the backstabber and find out more behind the lore of Anachronox, find out what does this all mean, etc., and discover more clues about Mistech, obviously, because if someone backstabbed you and they had this grand plan all along, it means that they knew something that you don't. Unfortunately, it's been 21 years, so the chance of a sequel is really low. As I said before, never say never, but 21 years. Think about that. 21 years. I think at this point the best chance of us finding out more is through a book, a comic, or maybe a little animation, or maybe a developer document somewhere that's hidden in the vaults that tells us what was supposed to happen in the sequel. Or maybe someday they'll do an interview with the developer Tom Hall and he'll tell us what was supposed to happen. Or maybe it's out there, I gotta go look. But that's it. So remember, if you decide to play this game again and it's been a while or for the very first time, just remember Anachronox ends on a cliffhanger, and while the story answered a lot of questions, there are also a lot of unanswered questions and a giant question mark for the fate of the crew. Tom Hall was inspired by some console role-playing games like Chrono Trigger and wanted to transfer that experience to PC. Anachronox's combat is active turn-based, which means you wait a certain amount of time to attack, but the battle goes on whether you are present or not. I've played this on the strongest difficulty, and this is one of the flaws of the game. The game is not really challenging and does not require much strategy. I grinded somewhat, and there were only 3 times where I was in a really challenging fight, and 2 of them were the last 2 fights of the game. Now later on, you do get to harness the power of Mistech and grab different enhancements, but during my first playthrough years ago on the normal difficulty, I didn't even mess with it, and now on the hardest one, I dabbled with it a bit because it can come in handy, especially at the end of the game, because those 2 last fights, especially the last one, the difficulty does spike. And the 3rd time I was talking about was when I was in the mountains during the middle of the game. Now this was before the Mistech enhancement stuff. I grinded a bit. I should have done more because I ran into what I assume to believe is a literal abominable snowman, and that thing was powerful. It was knocking boots the fuck out in 2 or 3 hits, and that showed me that even though it was kind of easy up until then, it's not a stroll through the park the whole way. There are some moments. Another issue with the combat is something that even the developers knew from the start, because there's a button to address that. And that is that the combat is so slow, and a lot of times painfully slow. So there's a button to speed it up, and that helps, but still, that's a problem. I don't mind long animations, I like looking at all that stuff, but damn, between the waiting, the special attacks, and the enemies, it's just slow. I mean, hurry the fuck up levels of slow. And when you add that in with the fact that for most of the fights, there's not much planning or strategy, that's a bad combination. Yes, on the hardest difficulty, there is some grinding and difficulty spikes, and I do recommend trying to get all the special attacks you can because I do like the animations, and they do help, but overall, there's not much of a challenge. Yes, you might run into a wall sometimes, and I do recommend experimenting with the Mistech Elementer system because, although I didn't have to use it that much, mixing different beetles for bonuses, it is really cool, and that is a part of the game that, if there was more difficulty, there'd be more use for it. So to me, combat is the weakest aspect of the game, so press the button to speed the combat up and it makes it a bit more tolerable. And while you don't have to strategize or calculate much during most of the fights, at the very least, you also don't have to grind a lot to get through most of the game, so you're not stuck there in this part of the game that could have used more work, just grinding and grinding and grinding and grinding, all this padding out. So at the very least, despite the flaws in the combat, you don't have to worry about so much padding or grinding. A big part of any piece of media is the atmosphere. What do the backgrounds look like? The colors? Where do you go? How does it support the narrative? And so on. Now, the fact that Anachronox does not take itself seriously does help its narrative because of where you're able to go throughout the universe. You will go to a corrupt Mistech church or a training center in the first 15 minutes of the game called Whackmaster Jax. Yes, that's the name. Whackmaster Jax. Or you might go to a colorful giant hive where it switches to a first-person descent-like shooter for a bit, and we'll talk about those little switches later. During development, Tom Hall talked about wanting to bring a bizarre atmosphere epic to PC. That was his and the team's vision. In order to make that so, it's not just the main story and vital characters that make it up. It's also the characters that you will talk to one time and never again. The characters that you might only pass by and remember on a replay. And this is just not reflected in the characters, but the places you go to, the little shops you might see, posters, colors, etc. And it's not just about seeing people so eccentric or off-kilter or whatever. That's obvious. They stick out 300 miles away, you can see that. It's also the little things that might make you say, yeah, wait, hold on, huh? That's a bit odd, what the hell? And the devs did succeed in that grand vision. Let's give some examples, South Anachronox being our first one. It's not a revolutionary design. It's not something that changes the game on how a futuristic city, well, in this case the slums of a city, should look in the future. It is similar to other pieces of media, but I think it's aesthetically pleasing, and thankfully it doesn't try to mix so many damn colors. It's an eyesore. Yes, buildings look similar, but I'm talking about the signs, the lights. It mainly sticks to shades of blue and green, and there are little things too. You see cops and mysterious beings with black sunglasses and suits, the men in black. The designs are similar, and how do I know? Because some of them be creeping around my city, and I've seen some of them harass people who see stuff that they really shouldn't have. It's been going on for over 70 years. Whether UFOs or whatever are interdimensional or intergalactic, or they come somewhere from the heavens. We get harassed when we see these things, and don't try to fight back, just run away, because these beings will eat you up, spit you out, and transport you somewhere else. So that's a little bit of advice. I know I'm going off topic, but look, these are vital information, and sometimes we all need to know it. And honestly, it's almost in the same context. It's a futuristic game. So anyways, besides that, it does play to the common tropes of living in a slum. We do see government agencies, authorities, or maybe something else hiding in corners, abusing civilians. We see creeps stalking folks, elevators exploding when you try to fix the wires. Well, I don't know how many of you had to deal with that. Thankfully, didn't happen yet. I don't really trust elevators, but that's what we see. We see entities that hide in the shadow, that trade in information. Shuttle terminals that refuse to sell tickets to people that are in debt because there's nowhere to run, there's nowhere to hide. If you owe something to some agency or you owe something to someone that's got some pull, they will find out. Even the shuttle machines. Probably even the soda vendors so you can't get yourself a damn Pepsi or whatever. So that's a nice little touch because, and this is a heads up, just a little tip. If you have to buy a shuttle ticket to get to another planet, don't pick Boots because you will not get one. He's in serious debt, and they know that. And once again, Boots, brother, Sly, I feel ya. God, that hits me right where it's not supposed to hit me. It hits me into the core of my being, the very essence of what a human being is. It's one thing that unites 99% of the human population, being denied something because of our finances. Now, South Anachronox sounds like a futuristic version of a regular slum you might see anywhere, but beneath the surface, do you want to know how seriously it takes itself? Well, the local news source, right in the beginning, what does this fine digital print tell us? The headlines. Stabbings are down. Stabbings down. Exclamation point, exclamation point. Now that sounds good, right? Well, this is just another reason why you should always read past the headlines. Stabbings are down. That doesn't mean that they're literally down. In fact, there's more of them. In fact, the rates that they're climbing, it's quite alarming. It just means that stabbings are literally down, as in the lower part of the body instead of the upper part. So you get it, right? Stabbings aren't down, they're literally down, the lower portion of the body. Whoever wrote that, fuck you. I mean that in an endearing way, of course, but seriously, fuck you. Fuck you. So if you think that's kind of off-kilter, odd, or slightly unusual, you can always learn how to fight to defend yourself against all these wackos running around. All you have to do is go to the Temple of Beatings and learn from the Grand Master, Whackmaster Jack. That's right, Whackmaster Jack. But whatever you do, don't get caught. Because you want to know how the police tries to interrogate people around here, entities, whatever, the citizens of South Anachronox. They do something called tickle torture. I think I've explained in enough ways how this place is very not typical. What's the right word for it? Unusual. It's not the slums that I'm used to, you may be used to, my cat may be used to, that person across the street may be used to, or just anyone in general. And if somehow, some way, you do live in a place that's even somewhat similar to what I just described, then we're living in a simulation and you haven't taken your medication. I haven't. I will admit it, I haven't. So maybe we should take our medication and we should do it together. So, encouragement. Yeah, you can do it because I don't like taking it, but maybe we are, maybe we're not. Either way, let's keep talking about Anachronox. Now, I have a question for everyone. How many games have you played where the place that you go to is your party member and vice versa? Your party member is a place that you go to. Well, if you haven't heard of a game, you have now, because Anachronox is one of those games, because there is a party member of, let's say, planet-sized proportions. And when I mean that, I literally mean planet. I mean a big motherfucker, a literal planet. The most interesting and creative part of Anachronox is Democratus, the level-turned party member turned level-turned party member, who makes their entrance by literally shooting a tractor beam and beaming you into its planet. Now, what is this place? It's a former isolationist colony turned a bureaucratic nightmare. And like the planet name itself, there's a planet-wide vote going on some very key issues. Very important life or death survival issues. Things that really hit the core of not only what the constituents want, but what they need. We're talking important things like, should interplanetary marriage be legal? Or should cycling vomit torture be legal? That's right, cycling vomit torture as a key issue, or as an issue in general, or as a thought. And something else that popped up, which seems tame in comparison, is a vote on illegal beet and meat farming. Now, some are caught up in that whirlwind of a process, but others know better. They know that it's corrupt and that this whole planet is just a sick illusion, and that terrifying, monotonous, dreadful wheel keeps spinning the same way it was, like a million little circles spinning inside another million circles. You can run and run all you want, but you know where you're gonna go. Anachronox is not subtle, not at all. We know what this is a parody of. It's not subtle. The joke is so in your face that you get a front row seat every time you have to use Democratis' skill. Now, what is their skill? Well, they can use their tractor beam to get whatever item, which is useful, it's convenient, but the minigame for that is they have to get the High Council to shut the fuck up so they can initiate the tractor beam. Yes, that nightmare wrapped in endless bureaucracy and elitism. That is what you have as a party member. And that's pretty damn creative. How many companions can go to letting you explore their civilization? Not their people, their actual civilization, because they're the planet. And then after that, they become your party member and they can actually become useful instead of driving you insane with that damn nightmare bureaucracy. Not many. In an off-kilter game filled with the utterly bizarre, if I could only show one clip, one screenshot, one area to try and entice people to play this game, to show everyone what Anachronox is, the area that I would choose as a small corner of the game, it goes by in a flash. You can walk through the whole place in less than a minute and a half. And it's something different. It's different from being swallowed by ships, shooting at hives, and dealing with psychotic prophets with fetishes for dirty shit. This area isolates Boots for a small period of time and strips him down to what he is at his core, a private investigator, and that place is called Wittendon. And it's one of the very few areas that is separated from the future. This looks like a small town from the 1800s. A lot of fancy buildings, Victorian-esque. A lot of snow. It's in the middle of nowhere. And after all this weird and oftentimes corny, bizarre encounters, and I mean corny in an endearing way, it's refreshing to come across something normal enough. And what is he doing here? Just doing a regular investigation into disappearances and attacks. And all of this is accompanied by the perfect piece of music. A piano. Listen to it, it's playing in the background. This melody, this loop, this piece of music. It's the perfect theme for this place. It's intoxicating. And the soundtrack itself is fantastic. From the very beginning, when I first went into South Anachronox, I heard a tune that was kind of calm. It was chill. It was just somewhat in the background, just settling, just very calming. And then near the end, it does pick up and remind you that there is a sense of urgency, or when you head into a strip club and hear Cold Sweat, which is very addicting and it gets stuck in your head, or the Democratis theme, which is the one that you're hearing in the background right now. They did a wonderful job with the soundtrack. The voice acting, however, it's just like another Iron Storm game, Deus Ex. You can tell that they got a lot of people in-house to do the voice acting, and it's a hit and miss, because it works for some people. I think the voice actors did a good job for Boots, Grumpos, Ro, and some other people, but in other cases, like Stiletto, it just does not sound right. The same thing with Deus Ex, it's a lot of in-house. And back years ago when I reviewed Deus Ex, I think I said that I liked the voice acting, and I forgot to explain why, because obviously hearing the voice acting in this and Deus Ex, you can obviously tell that a lot of it's in-house. It's kind of amateur. With this game and Deus Ex itself, it does work for some people, and then it fails for a lot of others. So that's what I mean by hit and miss. You notice early on that sometimes during cutscenes, the camera zooms out, it zooms in, pans out, and the camera is starting at an odd place. The team did this for a more cinematic approach to try to make it more like a movie, and that's why that was added in there. I guess you can say it was kind of experimental for the time. Another thing that they added, just ideas that were thrown in to see if it would work, is things that would mix up the gameplay. Sometimes you go from just what you regularly see to a little mini game. Now, one of them being a Descent-like game, kind of a rail shooter where you're first person's kind of like House of the Dead and you're going through very guided levels. Another one is more like a shoot 'em up, a shmup, and these things are very basic. There's not much complexity to them. They're just little mini games thrown in there to mix it up a bit. There's not a lot of them, so it's not a major part of the game. I just thought I would add that and the camera angle because those are things that I don't know if they're really experimental. Maybe the camera angle thing is, but they're just ideas that were thrown in there to try and mix it up. So it's not a major chunk of the game, but it is important to add that these things are there. I can't make this video without mentioning Crap Ton. That's right, Crap Ton, just spelled with the K. Unlike the other areas I talked about, I don't want to go too much into detail about this place, but I can't make a video without mentioning it like I said before. Now, we already know Anachronox is off-kilter and bizarre, but after all of the stuff that Boots and his crew went through, after Boots growing up, being in a slum where you see weird stuff like a prophet that chews on dirty shit to get their powers, you have to go to a place called Whackmaster Jack's to hone your skills after going on a planet that is extinct because some weird experiment led by a scientist that has a Simon Says lock-keeping mechanism. Gate mechanism. A gated community, you could say, for this damn scientist using Simon Says controls. Let's see what else. Oh, you have to go to Democratus and all their crazy shit. Vomit torture to get information out of people. What was it called? Cyclic vomit torture? I forgot. I don't care. Look at the sign. It's right here. After going through all of this stuff, what else do we see? Oh yeah, at one point you're roaming through the galaxy, desperate, trying to find answers, just trying to make your way, and trying to not just watch the crew all strangle each other because floating through space with these eccentric personalities, someone's gonna die at some point. Thankfully, it didn't happen. What happens after all this? You get taken in by a stereotypical golden age of comics comic book villain, which, listening to all the other stuff, this is probably one of the most normal things that happens in the game. This is one of my favorite areas in the game, and I don't want to talk too much about it because just in case someone wants to play it or replay it after watching this, not in this video, this is not one of those videos where I want to say everything, and trust me, there's a lot I want to talk about, but I do want to keep some things out. Who knows? Maybe a video in the future, I'll try to make it as many hours as I can, and you get to hear the wonderful or maybe concerning ramblings of me. Maybe another time, but this is another highlight of Anachronox. Look at this level. It has one of my favorite puzzles in the game. I love the colors, I love the environments, the enemies, and I just love how wacky and zany and very, very campy. That's one thing, that this level is extremely campy. Turn the knob up to 150. Very campy. And that's one of the things that makes it great. So, yes, Crap Ton. Could not forget it. Also, it reminds me of another game, Freedom Force. Even though Freedom Force came out after Anachronox, this definitely looks like a level that could have been in that game, for sure. Also, that's another game you should play, Freedom Force, and Freedom Force versus the Third Reich. So overall, what is Anachronox? It's definitely a game that was a product and also a victim of the studio that developed it. It was the last game from the original plan for the developer. It wasn't the last game from Iron Storm, but as Tom Hall explained in a 1998 interview, the plan was to have different people making different games, and they did do that. 3 games in less than 3 years. Daikatana, a flop. Deus Ex, critically acclaimed, and still loved till this day and beyond. And somewhere in the middle is Anachronox. It's definitely not a flop, but it somehow got swept under the rug, and unfortunately, it's forgotten about. It's a game that you gotta look for. It's a game that just was swept under a lot of places, and we never got a sequel. So the story of Boots is still ongoing somewhere, and maybe in another dimension we did get that trilogy, or maybe we just got at least a sequel. But in this realm, at least we got one. And maybe someday we'll get a sequel, or a comic, or just a development plan, a plot, outline, or just documents that has yet to be released about what the plan was for the trilogy. That's all I have to say about Anachronox for now. Thank you for watching, and it's been a while, so thank you for sticking with the channel. I'm back. I definitely don't plan on taking any more hiatuses. I'm just gonna take it as it comes and goes, and I'm just gonna do my best. So, if you want to leave a comment, go ahead. And if you want to get in contact with me, I will leave my Twitter in the description. Links will be there to the interviews, all the places that I got information from, etc., etc. To end the video, I'm going to show a couple clips of just Boots walking around. You won't hear me in the background. It'll just be some areas so you can take in the music, the atmospheres, the background more, and just drink it in. I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but I'm sticking with that. Have a great day.